The gunshot echoed through the valley as Levi Armstrong clutched his bleeding hands to his chest, the reins of his horse slipping from his fingers as pain shot through his body. He'd been ambushed by the Granger boys while riding back to Alta, Montana, a fate he should have seen coming after testifying against their brother last month in Helena. The year was 1878, and justice in the Montana Territory often came at a personal cost. Emma Kincaid was hanging laundry in her yard when she heard the distant sound of hoofbeats approaching her small homestead 3 miles outside of town. The rhythm was uneven, desperate. She shaded her eyes against the late afternoon sun as a horse came into view, its rider slumped forward and barely staying in the saddle. "Good Lord," she whispered, dropping her washing and running toward the approaching rider. The man's hat was gone, his dark hair matted with sweat, and his white shirt stained crimson. His hands, wrapped awkwardly around the saddle horn, were slick with blood. As the horse slowed to a stop in her yard, the man raised his head. His eyes, blue as a summer sky, met hers briefly before he slid from the saddle, landing in a heap at her feet. Emma knelt beside him. "Sir, can you hear me?" "Water," he croaked, his voice dry as prairie dust. "Please." She helped him to his feet, supporting his weight as they stumbled toward her cabin. Inside, she eased him onto a chair and hurried to fetch water. When she returned, he was examining his hands, wincing as he tried to flex his fingers. "What happened to you?" she asked, helping him drink. "Grangers," he managed, "shot at me from the ridge above Miller's Creek. Caught my hands when I raised them to surrender." He looked up at her, pain etched across his weathered face. "Levi Armstrong. I'm the new deputy in Alta." Emma had heard about the new deputy, a former Texas Ranger who'd moved north, seeking a quieter life. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. "Emma Kincaid," she replied, already moving to gather clean cloths in a basin. "I need to clean those wounds." The cowboy's hands shook from blood loss. She wrapped them in her apron and prayed quietly, her lips moving in silent supplication as she worked to stop the bleeding. Levi watched her through pain-hazed eyes, struck by the gentleness of her touch and the fierce determination in her expression. "You're good at this," he observed, his voice steadier now. "My father was a doctor during the war," she explained, not looking up from her task. "I learned what I could from him." Once the bleeding had slowed, Emma carefully unwrapped her now ruined apron and began washing his wounds. The shots had torn through the flesh of both palms, missing the bones by what seemed like divine intervention. "You're fortunate," she said, cleaning away dirt and blood. "A little higher or lower and you might have lost the use of your hands." Levi grimaced. "Don't feel particularly fortunate at the moment, Miss Kincaid." "Emma," she corrected, offering a small smile. "And you're alive, Deputy Armstrong. That's fortunate enough for today." She worked methodically, removing bits of fabric from the wounds before applying a poultice of herbs she'd gathered from her small garden. Her movements were practiced, confident, as she wrapped clean bandages around his hands. "How long have you been in Alta?" Levi asked, trying to distract himself from the pain. 3 years, she replied. "Came west with my father after my mother passed. He died last winter pneumonia." Her voice caught slightly. "I've been managing on my own since then." Levi studied her as she worked. She was perhaps 25, with auburn hair pulled back in a practical bun, though tendrils had escaped to frame her face. Her eyes were green as spring grass, and a light dusting of freckles crossed her nose. Not a conventional beauty, perhaps, but there was something compelling about her steady gaze and capable hands. "You shouldn't stay here alone," he said. "The Grangers might track me here." Emma's hands stilled momentarily. "I have a shotgun and I know how to use it. But you're right, we should get you to town once you're stable." She finished bandaging his right hand and moved to the left. "You'll need to rest first. You've lost blood." As darkness fell, Emma prepared a simple meal of beans and cornbread. She had to feed Levi, his bandaged hands making it impossible for him to hold a spoon. The intimacy of the act, sitting close enough to feel the warmth of him, bringing the spoon gently to his lips, caused a flush to creep up her neck. "I apologize for the imposition," he said after swallowing a mouthful. This isn't how I plan to introduce myself to the good people of Alta County. Emma smiled. I imagine not. How long have you been deputy? 2 weeks, he admitted. Sheriff Hollister hired me after the last deputy quit. Said Alta was growing too fast for one lawman. The gold strikes in the mountains have brought all sorts, Emma agreed, some better than others. After dinner, she made Levi a pallet near the fireplace, insisting he take her quilts while she used a blanket on her narrow bed behind the curtain that divided the one-room cabin. She checked his bandages one final time, noted with relief that the bleeding had stopped, then bid him good night. Sleep evaded Levi. The pain in his hands had dulled to a persistent throb, but his mind raced with thoughts of the ambush, the Grangers, and the quiet woman sleeping just feet away. He'd come to Montana seeking peace after years of tracking outlaws through Texas and New Mexico. Instead, he'd found himself immediately embroiled in conflict with the territory's most notorious family. The Grangers had established themselves in Alta 5 years earlier, buying up mining claims, some said, through intimidation and gradually expanding their influence. When their youngest brother, Tyler, had robbed the Alta Bank 3 months ago, Sheriff Hollister had finally managed to arrest him. Levi's testimony about recognizing Tyler's distinctive horse had helped secure a conviction. Now, it seemed, the family was seeking revenge. Dawn found Emma already up, tending to the chickens that scratched in the dirt outside. When Levi emerged from the cabin, she noted the pallor of his skin, but was relieved to see him steady on his feet. "How are your hands?" she asked, setting down her basket of eggs. "Painful," he admitted, "but I'll live thanks to you." Emma approached and carefully examined the bandages. No fresh bleeding. "That's good. I'll change these after breakfast." They ate in companionable silence, Emma again feeding Levi, though both had grown more comfortable with the arrangement. Afterward, as she unwrapped his hands to apply fresh poultices, he studied her face in the morning light. "You should come into town with me," he said. "It's not safe for you here alone." Emma's expression hardened slightly. "This is my home, Deputy. I won't be chased from it." The Grangers. "Have no quarrel with me," she interrupted. "And I have crops that need tending, animals that need feeding." Levi sighed, recognizing the stubborn set of her jaw. "At least let me send someone out to check on you." "I've managed 3 years on my own," she reminded him. "And I appreciate that," he said gently. "But things have changed. You've helped me. Which puts you in their sights too." Emma finished rebandaging his left hand before responding. 2 days, she finally said. "I'll give you 2 days to recover enough to ride back to town safely. Then we'll decide what's next." Levi wanted to argue but knew it would be futile. Instead, he nodded his agreement. Those 2 days passed in a rhythm that felt surprisingly natural. Emma tended her small farm, the vegetable garden, the chickens, the single milk cow, while Levi rested and gradually regained his strength. By the afternoon of the second day, he was able to walk to the creek behind her cabin, though the trip left him winded. "You've lost more blood than I thought," Emma observed as he returned, easing himself onto the bench outside her door. "I'll be fine," he insisted. "Just need time." That evening, as they sat before the fire, Levi shared stories of his time as a ranger, carefully editing the more violent episodes. Emma listened intently, occasionally asking questions that revealed her intelligence and curiosity about the world beyond Alta. "What brought you to Montana?" he asked eventually. "It's a hard place for a woman alone." Emma's gaze remained fixed on the flames. "My father was running from memories. After my mother died, everything in Virginia reminded him of her." She paused. "And I was running too, in my own way." "From what?" She hesitated. "A man. We were to be married, but I discovered he was unkind. When my father suggested we go west, I agreed immediately." Levi studied her profile, illuminated by the firelight. "This man, did he hurt you?" "Not physically," she said quietly, "but he would have eventually. I saw how he treated those he considered beneath him." She turned to face Levi. "What about you? What are you running from?" His expression sobered. "The man I was becoming. 15 years of tracking outlaws changes you. It makes you harder, colder. He flexed his bandaged hands carefully. I started to enjoy the hunt too much. Decided it was time for something different before I lost the last pieces of my humanity. The honesty of his confession hung between them, creating a moment of connection that neither had anticipated. Emma reached out impulsively, her fingers brushing his arm. "Thank you for trusting me with that," she said softly. Levi covered her hand with his bandaged one, the touch light but meaningful. "Thank you for saving my life." Their eyes met, and something shifted between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits. The moment stretched, fragile as spun glass, until Emma gently withdrew her hand and rose to prepare for bed. The morning of the third day dawned clear and cool. Levi woke feeling stronger, the pain in his hands reduced to a dull ache. Emma rebandaged the wounds, noting with satisfaction that they were healing cleanly. "You should be able to ride today," she said, tying off the last bandage. Levi flexed his fingers carefully. "Still can't grip much, but I can manage with your help." Emma nodded, ignoring the unexpected pang of regret at the thought of his departure. She'd grown accustomed to his presence, the quiet strength of him, the dry humor that emerged as he healed, the way his gaze followed her as she moved about the cabin. After breakfast, she helped him prepare for the journey to town, packing food and fresh bandages for the road. As they stepped outside to saddle his horse, the sound of approaching riders made them both freeze. "Get inside," Levi said urgently, reaching instinctively for a gun that wasn't there. Emma shook her head. "My shotgun's by the door. I'll get it." Before either could move, 4 riders appeared at the edge of her property. Even at a distance, Levi recognized the lead rider's distinctive red beard, Roland Granger, the eldest of the brothers. "Stay behind me," Levi murmured as the riders approached. "Deputy Armstrong," Roland called, his voice carrying across the yard. "Thought we'd finished you at the creek." Emma slipped inside and returned moments later with her shotgun, positioning herself beside Levi. "This is private property, gentlemen," she called. "I'll thank you to state your business or move along." Roland's laugh was ugly. "Feisty little thing, ain't she? Your business is with us, madam. You're harboring a man who helped send our brother to prison." "Your brother robbed a bank," Levi replied evenly. "He's lucky he didn't hang." The Grangers stopped 20 yards away, 4 men on horseback forming an intimidating line. Besides Roland, Levi recognized the middle brother, Vernon, and youngest surviving brother, Preston. The 4th man was unknown to him, likely one of their numerous cousins. "Miss Kincaid has nothing to do with your quarrel," Levi said. "This is between us," Roland spat. "She made it her business when she took you in." His eyes narrowed. "Way I see it, you owe us, Armstrong. Tyler's doing 5 years because of your testimony." "Tyler's doing 5 years because he robbed a bank," Levi corrected. "And if you're smart, you'll ride away now before you join him." Vernon Granger laughed. "4 of us, 1 of you with busted hands. Don't fancy your odds, deputy." "2 of us," Emma said firmly, raising her shotgun. "And at this range, I won't miss." A tense silence fell. Levi could feel his heart hammering in his chest, aware that his injured hands made him nearly useless in a fight. Emma stood steady beside him, her shotgun unwavering. After a long moment, Roland nodded slowly. "Another time, then." His cold gaze shifted to Emma. "You've chosen poorly, Miss Kincaid. Alta's a small place. We don't forget our friends or our enemies." With that, he wheeled his horse around, his brothers following suit. The 4th rider lingered momentarily, his hand hovering near his holster, before joining the retreat. Only when they disappeared from sight did Emma lower the shotgun, her hands trembling slightly. "We need to get to town," Levi said grimly. "Now." This time, Emma didn't argue. Within half an hour, she had packed essential belongings, secured her livestock as best she could, and saddled both Levi's horse and her own sturdy mare. The journey to Alta would take 2 hours, at a steady pace longer if they encountered trouble. They rode in silence for the first mile, Levi scanning the ridgelines for signs of the Grangers, Emma lost in thought. Finally she spoke. "Will they come back to my farm?" Levi considered the question carefully. Possibly. The Grangers are known for holding grudges, but they usually focus on their primary target. You, she clarified. He nodded. Me. But they've seen your face now, know you helped me. That puts you in danger too. Emma's expression hardened. I won't be bullied from my home, Deputy. Levi, he corrected gently. I think we're past formalities now, Emma. She glanced at him, a small smile softening her features momentarily. Levi, then, she sighed. What happens when we reach Alta? First, we see the doctor about my hands. Then I talk to Sheriff Hollister. The Grangers have crossed a line attacking a lawman. That's federal territory now. Will that stop them? Levi's expression was grim. It might make them think twice, or it might make them more desperate. They reached Alta without incident shortly after noon. The town had grown considerably in the 3 years since Emma's arrival, now boasting a proper main street with wooden sidewalks, a 2-story hotel, and various businesses catering to the miners and ranchers of the region. Sheriff Hollister met them outside the doctor's office, his weathered face creasing with concern as he took in Levi's bandaged hands and Emma's presence. Grangers? He asked simply. Levi nodded. Ambushed me at Miller's Creek. Would have finished the job if Miss Kincaid hadn't taken me in. He quickly explained the morning's confrontation. The sheriff's expression darkened. They're getting bolder. Time we put a stop to this. He turned to Emma. You'd best stay in town for now, Miss Kincaid. I can arrange a room at the boarding house. I can't afford, she began. The town will cover it, Hollister interrupted. Consider it payment for saving my deputy. After seeing the doctor, who confirmed Emma's assessment that the wounds would heal without permanent damage, Levi accompanied her to Mrs. Whitaker's boarding house. The elderly widow showed Emma to a small but clean room on the 2nd floor, clucking sympathetically over her situation. You'll be safe here, dear, Mrs. Whitaker assured her. No Granger would dare cause trouble under my roof. Left alone, Emma sat on the narrow bed, suddenly overwhelmed by the day's events. Her quiet life had been upended in the space of 3 days, all because she'd chosen to help a wounded man. Yet as she thought of Levi, his quiet strength, his integrity, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, she couldn't bring herself to regret her decision. Over the next week, Levi visited daily. First to have his bandages changed, then simply to see her. They would walk together through town, his healing hands gradually regaining function, their conversations flowing easily between them. Emma found work helping at the general store, her knowledge of herbs and remedies proving valuable to Mr. Peterson, the proprietor. Word reached them that federal marshals had been summoned to deal with the Granger situation, but they were at least 2 weeks away, occupied with troubles further north in the territory. What will happen when they arrive? Emma asked Levi as they sat on a bench outside the church one evening, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. They'll arrest the Grangers for attacking a federal deputy, he explained. The brothers will likely face prison time, which might finally break their hold on this region. Emma studied his profile. And after that? Will you stay in Alta? The question hung between them, weighted with unspoken meaning. Levi turned to face her, his expression serious. I came here seeking peace, he said quietly. For the first time in years, I think I might have found it, though not in the way I expected. He hesitated. What about you? Will you return to your homestead? I should, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. It's all I have. Is it? Levi asked, his gaze holding hers. Before she could respond, Sheriff Hollister approached at a brisk pace. Armstrong, he called. Trouble at the Sagebrush Saloon. Vernon Granger's drunk and making threats. Levi rose immediately, his right hand moving to the revolver he'd only recently been able to wear again. Stay here, he told Emma. Be careful, she replied, anxiety evident in her voice. He squeezed her hand briefly before following Hollister toward the saloon at the end of the street. Emma watched them go, fear knotting in her stomach. She'd seen the Grangers, recognized the malice in Roland's eyes. If anything happened to Levi, unable to sit still, she began walking toward the general store, needing distraction. As she passed an alleyway between buildings, a rough hand suddenly clamped over her mouth, dragging her into the shadows. "Make a sound and you're dead," a voice hissed in her ear. Preston Granger, the youngest brother. Emma struggled against his grip as he pulled her deeper into the alley. Behind them, a horse waited in the shadows. Preston's intention was clear: to use her as leverage against Levi and the sheriff. As he attempted to lift her onto the horse, Emma drove her elbow hard into his ribs. Preston grunted in pain but didn't release her. Instead, he slammed her against the wall, stars exploding behind her eyes as her head connected with the rough boards. "You'll regret that," he growled, drawing a knife from his belt. Emma's vision swam, but she focused enough to see the blade gleaming in the fading light. With strength born of desperation, she brought her knee up sharply between Preston's legs. He doubled over with a howl of pain, the knife clattering to the ground. Emma scrambled for it, her fingers closing around the handle just as Preston lunged for her again. Without thinking, she slashed outward, feeling the blade connect with flesh. Preston reeled backward, clutching his arm as blood seeped between his fingers. "You bitch!" he snarled, reaching for his gun. A shot rang out, and Preston froze, his eyes widening in shock before he crumpled to the ground. Behind him stood Mrs. Whitaker, a small derringer smoking in her hand. "Are you all right, child?" the older woman asked, hurrying forward. Emma nodded mutely, still clutching the knife as she stared at Preston's motionless form. "Is he?" "Just winged him," Mrs. Whitaker said, kicking Preston's gun away. "But he'll not be causing more trouble tonight." The commotion had drawn attention. Within moments, Levi and Sheriff Hollister arrived, having heard the gunshot from the saloon. Levi took in the scene: Emma pressed against the wall, knife in hand, Mrs. Whitaker standing guard with her derringer, Preston moaning on the ground. "Emma," Levi said urgently, moving to her side. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, though her legs felt suddenly unsteady. Levi wrapped an arm around her waist, supporting her as Sheriff Hollister handcuffed the wounded Preston. "Attempted kidnapping," Mrs. Whitaker explained briskly. "Caught him dragging Miss Kincaid into this alley. Good thing I was returning from evening services and heard the struggle." Hollister nodded grimly. "That's it for the Grangers. Between this and Vernon's display at the saloon, I've got cause to arrest the lot of them." He glanced at Levi. "Round up some deputies. We're riding to their ranch tonight." Levi hesitated, looking at Emma. "I should get her somewhere safe first." "I'll see to Miss Kincaid," Mrs. Whitaker said firmly. "You boys do what needs doing." Later that night, Emma sat in Mrs. Whitaker's parlor, a blanket around her shoulders and a cup of tea in her hands. The elderly woman had insisted Emma stay with her rather than return to the boarding house, concerned about her well-being after the attack. "You're a brave girl," Mrs. Whitaker said, patting Emma's hand. "Not many would have fought back like that." Emma stared into her tea. "I was terrified." "Courage isn't the absence of fear, dear. It's acting despite it." The older woman smiled. "That young deputy of yours certainly thinks you're something special." Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks. "He's not my deputy." Mrs. Whitaker's knowing smile widened. "Not yet, perhaps." Dawn was breaking when Levi returned, exhaustion etched on his face, but relief in his eyes. Mrs. Whitaker ushered him into the parlor, where Emma had eventually fallen asleep on the sofa, waking at the sound of his footsteps. "What happened?" she asked, sitting up. Levi sank into a chair across from her. "We've arrested all 3 remaining Granger brothers and 2 of their cousins. Roland tried to resist, took a bullet in the shoulder." He rubbed a hand over his face. "It's over, Emma. They'll stand trial for attacking a federal officer, attempted kidnapping, and various other charges that have been building for years." Emma studied him, noting the fresh bandage on his forearm. "You're hurt." He glanced down. "Just a scratch. Vernon had a knife." His expression grew serious. "How are you?" "Better, now that you're back safely," she admitted. Mrs. Whitaker discreetly excused herself, leaving them alone in the parlor. In the silence that followed, Levi moved to sit beside Emma on the sofa. "I thought I might lose you tonight," he said quietly. "When I heard that gunshot." Emma's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. "I was afraid too." For both of us." Levi lifted their joined hands, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I've only known you a short time, Emma Kincaid, but I can't imagine my life without you in it now." Her heart fluttered in her chest. "What are you saying, Levi?" "I'm saying I care for you, deeply." His blue eyes held hers. "And if you'll allow it, I'd like to court you properly. No Grangers, no danger, just a man calling on a woman he admires tremendously." Emma smiled, the fear and tension of the night melting away in the warmth of his gaze. "I'd like that very much." Spring blossomed into summer, and Levi's courtship of Emma became the talk of Alta. They were seen together at church socials, walking along the creek, sharing meals at the hotel restaurant. The federal marshals arrived and took custody of the Grangers, transporting them to Helena for trial, which relieved the last of the tension hanging over the town. Emma returned to her homestead, though not alone. Levi and several townspeople helped repair damage the Grangers had caused during her absence: broken windows, slaughtered chickens, trampled garden beds. The community's support touched Emma deeply, making her feel, for the first time, truly at home in Alta. As summer waned, Levi approached Sheriff Hollister with a proposition. "I'd like to build on the land adjacent to Miss Kincaid's property," he explained, "with your permission to continue as deputy." Hollister studied him knowingly. "Planning on making an honest woman of her, are you?" Levi nodded, unable to suppress his smile. "If she'll have me." "About time," the sheriff grunted. "Town's been taking bets on when you'd ask her." That evening, Levi rode out to Emma's homestead, a small box in his pocket and nervous anticipation in his heart. He found her in the garden, gathering late tomatoes as the sun began its descent behind the mountains. "Levi," she greeted him with a smile, wiping her hands on her apron, a new one he'd given her to replace the one ruined while tending his wounds. "I wasn't expecting you today." He dismounted, suddenly feeling like a green boy rather than a man who'd faced down outlaws across 2 territories. "I was hoping we might walk down to the creek," he said. "It's a beautiful evening." Emma studied him curiously but nodded, removing her apron and setting down her basket. They walked in comfortable silence, their hands occasionally brushing until Levi took hers firmly in his. At the creek where they'd often sat during his visits, Levi guided her to a fallen log that served as their bench. The setting sun cast golden light across the water, while early fireflies began to appear among the trees. "Emma," he began, turning to face her, "these past months have been the happiest of my life." She smiled, squeezing his hand. "Mine too." "When I came to Montana, I was seeking peace after years of violence," he continued. "I never expected to find love as well." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing the small wooden box. "I carved this for you." Emma accepted the box, opening it carefully. Inside lay a ring, a simple gold band with a small pearl set in the center. "Levi," she breathed. "It was my mother's," he explained. "The only thing I have left of her. I've carried it with me all these years, waiting for someone worthy of it." He took a deep breath. "Emma Kincaid, would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Tears welled in Emma's eyes as she looked from the ring to the man before her, the man whose wounded hands she had tended, whose strength and kindness had captured her heart. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you, Levi Armstrong." Their wedding took place in October, with the aspen trees glowing gold against the mountains and the first hint of winter in the air. The entire town turned out for the celebration, held in the newly completed church with Sheriff Hollister giving the bride away. Mrs. Whitaker dabbed at her eyes throughout the ceremony, while Mr. Peterson from the general store provided a magnificent wedding cake. Dr. Hudson, who had treated Levi's hands after their return to town, raised the first toast to the couple's health and happiness. By Christmas, Levi had completed construction of their new home, larger than Emma's original cabin, but built with the same care and attention to detail. He continued his duties as deputy, while Emma established a thriving business selling her herbal remedies and healing potions to the townspeople. Word reached them in spring that the Granger brothers had been sentenced to 10 years in the territorial prison. Alta celebrated the news, finally free from the family's shadow of intimidation and violence. On the anniversary of the day Levi had ridden wounded into Emma's yard, they sat together on their porch, watching the sunset. Emma's hand rested on her growing belly, their first child due in late summer. "Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been?" she asked softly. "If the Grangers hadn't ambushed you that day?" Levi covered her hand with his, the scars on his palms a permanent reminder of their beginning. "I believe we would have found each other somehow," he said. "Some things are meant to be." Emma leaned against his shoulder. "Like a wounded deputy and a lonely homesteader?" "Exactly like that," he agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Though I prefer to think of us now, sheriff's deputy and his healing wife. Soon-to-be parents." "Sheriff's deputy?" Emma asked, raising an eyebrow. Levi smiled. "Hollister's retiring next month. Asked me to run for sheriff in the fall election." Emma's eyes widened. "Levi, that's wonderful." She studied his face. "You'll accept, won't you?" He nodded. "If you're supportive. It would mean more responsibility, but also more stability for our family." "Our family," Emma repeated, savoring the words as she often did. After years of solitude, the phrase still held a particular sweetness. The years that followed brought joy and challenges in equal measure. Their first child, a son they named Thomas after Emma's father, arrived in August, a sturdy boy with Levi's blue eyes and Emma's determined spirit. A daughter, Sarah, followed 18 months later, completing their family. Levi was elected sheriff without opposition, respected throughout the county for his fairness and integrity. Emma's knowledge of healing expanded as she studied medical texts ordered from back east, eventually becoming Alta's unofficial doctor, until a proper physician arrived in 1885. The town grew with the completion of the Northern Pacific Railroad spur, bringing new settlers and opportunities. Levi and Emma's homestead flourished, adding cattle and expanding their crops. They built a proper barn, added rooms to their house as their children grew, and established deep roots in the community they'd helped shape. On summer evenings, they still walked to the creek where Levi had proposed, sometimes with their children splashing happily ahead, sometimes alone in rare moments of solitude. They would sit on their log bench, hands intertwined, and marvel at the life they'd built together. "Do you remember the prayer you whispered when you wrapped my hands that first day?" Levi asked on one such evening, their 20th anniversary approaching. Emma smiled, the years having added fine lines around her eyes but only deepening her beauty in Levi's view. "I asked God to spare your hands, to guide mine in healing you, and—" She paused, a blush still able to color her cheeks after all these years. "To let you see me truly, see me." "He answered all three," Levi said softly, raising her hand to his lips, "and gave me far more than I dared ask for myself." As twilight deepened around them, Emma rested her head on her husband's shoulder, thankful for the wounded cowboy who had ridden into her life and for her own courage in opening her heart to him. From the moment his blood-stained hands had been cradled in her apron to this peaceful evening beside the creek, their love had been a journey of healing for his wounds, for her loneliness, for the broken places in both their hearts. "I love you, Sheriff Armstrong," she whispered. "And I love you, Mrs. Armstrong," he replied, his arm tightening around her waist as the first stars appeared overhead. "Today and always." In the distance, the church bells of Alta rang out the hour, their clear tones carrying across the valley that had become their home. Thomas and Sarah would be waiting at the house, perhaps with their own children visiting from nearby ranches. There would be laughter and stories, the familiar chaos of family gatherings that both Emma and Levi treasured after their solitary beginnings. Later, they would walk hand in hand back to the home they'd built together, guided by lamplight and the deep certainty that in finding each other, they had found everything they needed. The wounded hands she had once wrapped in her apron would hold hers securely, their shared strength carrying them forward into whatever adventures still awaited. As Alta grew into the new century, newer residents would often ask about the distinguished sheriff and his herb-healing wife. Old-timers would smile and tell the tale of the bleeding deputy and the brave homesteader, how she had saved his hands and he had captured her heart, how their love had helped transform a rough mining town into a community. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the mountains turned purple with sunset, the elderly couple could still be seen walking together toward the creek, their silhouettes merging into one as they disappeared into the gathering dusk, their love a living testament to the healing power of courage, compassion, and unwavering devotion.